This wasn't deliberately planned, but it's been officially 3 years since my last stage presence ranking video. It wasn't that I was avoiding making one, it's just that they're really demanding and they require plenty of time and care and energy and constant ranking and re-ranking and, well, I guess I have kind of been avoiding it. I don't know, never mind. But for a while now, numerous combinations have been suggested to me over the last couple of years for my next stage presence ranking project. And after some consideration, I've decided to settle on this combination because I believe it felt right. I figured if I was going to return to the world of stage presence ranking again, I may as well focus on groups that I not only frequently watch, but whose performances I enjoy from time to time. I decided on this combination while re-watching a generalized video I made a couple years ago while ranking 4th Gen girl group stage presence. And as much as I loved that video, it did little justice to groups that I was talking about because it was unscripted and it was kind of for fun without too much thought placed into it. This video is my way of adding a little more meat to the bones, also my way of updating a long neglected series with a long overdue episode. So without wasting too much of your time, I think I'll start business as usual with some disclaimers as I usually do for these videos. 1. This is my video. I know this may seem really obvious, but there are people who tend to forget that and believe that they have some obligation to tell me how to run things here. While I am all for free speech, feel free to disagree with this ranking if you would like to. But if you have an opinion on how you think I should rank my personal list to cater to your preferences, I would highly suggest going to make your own video. Speaking of preferences, 2. Stage presence is subjective. I understand that I created a system that helps me categorize and rank idols specifically, but it's not a hard and fast, tried and true, perfect method, no matter how formal it may sound. What I consider to be attractive to an audience in stage presence may simply not resonate with you or your personal taste, so try not to take it personally. I will say that I did try to the best of my ability to keep my biases in check. I had to rank these idols a total of 6 different times before landing on a final list to make sure that it made sense. And more importantly, for every score that I gave an idol, I tried to justify it in a way that I believe would make sense to an audience. Because I am human, there were times when I found myself being lenient on idols from better performing groups while being harder on those that don't perform as well as the others. There were also times when I found myself finding an idol more interesting because of their looks, like Liz, or a change in their styling, like Ray. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I've spent as much time as I can to keep my bias in check, but at the end of the day, I am still a human being. So maybe sometimes my bias could come into play too. 3. Mind the title of this video. There's a reason why I call it a brutal ranking. That is because I am not giving participation trophies to avoid backlash. In case you're new to this platform, backlash is kind of my home. I'm used to that kind of thing. So if you think you can bully me into changing my mind about the way I've ranked an idol just so you can get what you want, you're gravely mistaken and you're on the wrong platform. So without further ado, let's start ranking groups. When ranking groups, I like to take a slightly different approach to ranking individual idols. While things like body language and facial expressions and consistency do matter to me, more than that, a group's synergy is what I really zone in on. How many good individual performers there are in a particular group matters little to me if the group cannot work well together as a team to deliver a cohesive performance. If one or a few members of this group are exceptional at what they do, while the rest are lackluster and below average, it's not going to be easy to ignore. The exceptional ones will stick out like a sore thumb if they don't know how to blend well with the archetypes of their teammates, which might disorient their stage presence harmony. As I've studied a lot of groups in stage presence, I've been humbled by the reality of groups filled with mediocre performers showing better teamwork and synergy than groups of exceptional ones who try to one-up each other like they're in a secret competition that the audience knows nothing about. And yes, baby monster, I'm looking at you. The whole point of practicing before performances is for a group to figure out what looks good and what doesn't, and for the individuals to find a way to make their performances as cohesive as possible and as pleasing to the viewers. And mind you, this is not about great performers deeming their skill set to the level of those who cannot perform, but rather finding the balance between their exceptional talent and the overall group average in order to know when to stand out and when to blend in and let others shine. Twice, despite having plenty of weak performers individually, they perform very well as a group. They're always in sync, none of their better performers do too much to overpower the others, and they flow well together in their energy. They complement one another, and where there are weaknesses in certain members, the others more than make up for it. I will say, for groups with majority average performers, it does help to have more than 5 members and intricate choreographies. This is why IZ*ONE was always so fun to watch, even though majority of them at that time were below average performers. Choreographies aside, I will say that groups that score higher on my board don't really need lights, dramatic decor, backup dancers, or even choreography. They just simply work well together to give their audience a memorable experience. No matter what concept they tackle, that is if they are the kind of group that takes on different ones, each member makes sure to pull their weight to give a cohesive performance. If one member stands out too much or goes out of their way to do the most to outshine the group, they will definitely rank lower on my list. Now, once in a while in these videos, I am hit with a dilemma where all the groups I am ranking do give fun and interactive performances, both in and outside of music shows, which means that someone has to be ranked last, and unfortunately, that ends up leading to squabbles in the comment section because someone always assumes that the ones I rank bottom I consider not good performers, which unfortunately is the case with this video. But I do want to clarify that I'm never bored watching any of these groups when they perform, so none of them are bad, including the ones that rank at the bottom. It just so happens that some are better performers than others, and I can recognize that even though I enjoy watching all 4 groups perform. So please do keep that in mind as I rank. Thank you. Coming in at number 4, we have IVE. Over the years, watching IVE as a whole perfect their stage presence craft has been enjoyable. Whether it is the members weaker in stage presence, bettering their skills and pulling their weight for the group, or the better performers finding ways to improve still and becoming more comfortable on stage, the group as a whole has proved that they can be good at what they do. Yujin, their best performer obviously, though miles ahead of the rest skill-wise, has been great at mobilizing the group so they look pleasing on stage, as demonstrated in their IVE On series, which offers a behind-the-scenes look into their practices. Plenty of thought goes into making sure that they are not only pleasing to the eye, but that when they perform, they give their best facial expressions and energy. I am aware that there have been plenty of debate as to whether their choreographies are disorienting their performances, especially during the Heya and Ascendio era. Many, while they appreciate the girls' efforts to sing live, they feel as if it has come at a cost of intricate choreographies, which makes them enjoy their performances less. But I'm just gonna say it right now, I literally don't care. I don't, because when I watch these girls perform, whether on music shows, concerts, or festivals, I always have one major takeaway. They freaking love their jobs. This doesn't eliminate the possibility of me understanding where the others are coming from. Polished choreographies help give objectively satisfying performances, and K-pop has thrived on polished choreographies for years. For me personally, however, when they smile, when they're playful, and are always hyping up their audience to give them a good time, that matters to me more because it comes off as natural. Their Lollapalooza debut last year was proof of it. A massive audience who, by the way, a sizable chunk had no idea who they were not only impressed, but genuinely had a great time, which should be the aim of every performance. While they almost always had amazing sets on their music shows, in this festival, the girls had no pretty sets or fancy choreography to rely on, just skill, talent, and great energy for 40 minutes straight. And not a single minute of that performance was boring. I feel at the beginning, IVE was not a group that could capture an audience with sheer skill. They weren't necessarily bad, but I will say they should be grateful that they were stunning, to say the least. Yujin and Wonyoung, having more experience, obviously stood out as the better performers, and at that point, Yujin had already gone viral for how she performed IVE's One sequence, with fans literally naming the song after her. As time passed for IVE and comebacks frequented, the rest of the group learned to relax a little and not worry too much about looking good and proper, which is what usually leads to robotic and unenthusiastic performances. This is a risk for most rookies, to be fair. The concerns about being judged and their songs not succeeding and putting themselves out there for millions of people to judge can be a little bit nerve-wracking, so I always try my best to extend grace for them. But sometimes some groups will end up getting stuck there doing the bare minimum job and never going the extra mile to better their group performances. And I'm convinced that this happens whenever they are never challenged to move out of their comfort zone. I Am Era was the start of IVE being challenged to do better, as prior to that, following Wonyoung and Yiso's lip sync performance, audience doubt began to creep in. Because of that doubt, IVE were being forced to constantly prove themselves, and while I'll never justify the harassment they or any other group has faced, the criticism did push them to be better performers. Comfort is an enemy of progress in stage presence, and if people demand better from their artists, they will do better. I think the Lollapalooza festival freed something in their system, because not only did it test their limits and showed them that it was okay to let loose and not worry about perfection as long as the audience is having fun, but I began to see a difference in their group performances at the beginning of this year after that festival. The rebellious symbolism in Rebel Heart was well expressed in their stages when they performed. The need for perfection that is often found in K-pop group performances has started to wear off, and the rest of the girls, especially Yiso, who takes every opportunity to hype up the crowd, proudly sings and chorus all by herself, and isn't affected by a few stage mishaps. As a team, their synergy is strong, even though there's a sizable gap in performance skill between Yujin and the rest of the group. She has learned to match her charisma to the style of the group's performances so she doesn't look out of balance, a skill I've come to admire in Geo, who's a much stronger performer than the rest of Twice. This goes to show that she truly understands what teamwork is, which isn't being a better performer than everyone else, but matching your team's energy while highlighting your strengths. So while in general they do not necessarily outperform any of the groups in this specific video, by no means are they boring or unsatisfactory. Instead, they've proven their critics wrong over time by being one of the better performing groups of their generation. Of course, I have nothing but nice things to say about a group that sings during their dance practices, just because they can. From their debut, NMIXX stage presence has always been intriguing to me. I appreciated them in a since-privated video, along with a few other artists, discussing the difference between good and great stage presence. I plan on re-uploading that soon. Following their amazing KCON performance in 2022, covering Very Nice by 17. I am never gonna shut up about that performance for as long as I live. Everything I've said about stage presence from the beginning on this channel always boils down to making your audience feel good about watching you perform, and I don't think I can recall a time I didn't enjoy watching NMIXX on a stage. Even when I wasn't a fan of a title track they just released, I wanted to see them perform it on stage. Their debut wasn't my favorite of their discography, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy every second I watched them perform it. Their performances had so much confidence, their group synergy was impressive, and yes, the vocals were live, literally every time. When Dice came out, a song that I actually loved and enjoyed, the performances became even more exciting for me. Now, mind you, I am just talking about their regular daily music show performances. Outside of those, fan meets, concerts, festivals, and award shows are even more fun to watch. Their tours always have their audiences screaming at the top of their voices and enjoying themselves and having a good time. They engage with them so well in every song that they perform, and they're always hyping them up to join in on the singing, especially on their Dice and OO performances. Lily is literally the concept's personal hype woman. Even when at some concerts they don't have the intricate certs they definitely deserve, it almost doesn't even matter because they alone with some good music is enough to enjoy. I notice when NMIXX's performances are talked about, their live singing often takes center stage and gets all the praise, which, do not get me wrong, it ought to be praised. But I do feel that other aspects of their skills are overshadowed by these sentiments and definitely deserve more recognition. Their energy as a group especially deserves as much recognition as their singing gets, because ultimately this is what keeps an audience going in a 2-hour concert. I've had a few disagreements with people who believe that live singing makes one a better performer, but when they bring up NMIXX, I can understand why they feel that way. I look back at their Hey Mama performance specifically, a song that doesn't necessarily fit majority of the members' stage presence styles, but was strengthened because they were live singing. Projecting their voices required effort, and I think that translated into their increased energy and facial expressions, making even their weaker performers look fierce and powerful. It adds more sense to the live singing argument when I look at it that way. I also believe that the fact that the song in itself was out of some of the members' depth, they felt a need to put in extra effort, which is always a plus in my book. Speaking of that performance, I feel like what really made me place NMIXX third is their exploration of more genres in their music in comparison to IVE, which has tested their range more than IVE has. While IVE has been challenged in skill and endurance, NMIXX is challenged in range because of the constant changing of genres for their title tracks, which has led to the blossoming of some members, especially Kyujin and Jiwoo. Before I press on, I'm not saying that IVE only sings one genre, but what I am saying is that the concepts they explore do not stray too far from the quote-unquote IVE feel, which usually doesn't test range. Looking at NMIXX's comebacks this year, Blue Valentine and Know About Me require different performance styles to express their themes, while Rebel Heart and Attitude can be performed well by any one of the members with just a little bit of charismatic energy. The songs that they've covered as groups as well have also tested their range and strengthened their group's skill set more than IVE has, and that's why, apart from the fact that they are better performers, I have ranked them above IVE. Coming in at number 2, SSERAFIM. I think it goes without saying that I was not the biggest fan of their Coachella performance last year. Although some fear-nots have tried to contend with me on that one, as someone who's praised their stage presence from debut and made an entire video dedicated to them just for that, mind you, that's not a thing I do for rookie groups, I simply never found the defenses for that performance satisfactory. However, one performance I consider not up to par has never erased the hundreds of good ones, and over the years, SSERAFIM has done nothing but deliver one attention-worthy performance after another, whether in music shows, award shows, or group tours. I could always tell that they had something special to give right from the beginning, hence why I made the video on their stage presence. I mainly spoke about how the stage seemed like a natural home to them. And while for Sakura and Chaewon that could be credited to their IZ*ONE experience, the other four, despite being rookies, felt like natural-born performers. From day one, all the aspects of a great performance needed from a group they have possessed. Energy, charisma, balance, synergy, presence, and confidence. Even in the middle of the chaos that was their first controversy, fans could not help but point out how even though they were rookies, they didn't feel like it because of their performance skill set. Even up to now, they fit like a puzzle, each member being an essential piece to the whole picture. Every member plays a necessary role to the overall group chemistry, and they complement each other's strength almost perfectly. Their strength as a group, in general, has always been their ability to portray the attitude of the music they perform. That's why I dedicated a whole video to them during their debut. You could see the confidence and the fearlessness in their stage presence when they performed Fearless. Stage presence should make an audience feel the emotion behind the song. And every song they have performed, whether it's the charismatic Anti-Fragile, the sensual Smart, or the carefree recent comeback of Spaghetti. I've always noticed the show don't tell skill in their performances. That makes me feel the attitude behind the song even without understanding the lyrics. Their skill, unlike the last two groups, doesn't just feel like it came with tons of effort behind it. Not that that's a bad thing, but rather making something that you have practiced over and over again look effortless, not gimmicky, fake, or strained is impressive. Even better than that, how confident they are at what they do has never made them relax in giving good performances for an audience. I cannot remember what group my best friend and I were discussing several months ago, but she stated that she had lost interest in their performances in general because they didn't seem to have the hunger for excellence they used to have in their rookie years. This is a risk that every group faces, I think. Not me being judgmental, but just realizing that the industry can be monotonous and heavy weighing on artists from time to time, and they can get comfortable with the many music shows that they do, which leads them to barely improving their stage presence skill sets due to familiarity. I think the opposite can be said for SSERAFIM, which is why my love for their stages has never died over the years. They have never lost their hunger for excellence. Whenever they perform, it almost feels like the debut era all over again, especially with the recent comeback Spaghetti. Not in the sense that their stage presence is the same as that era, but rather they still have that need to make the best memorable impression that they can. The spark of excitement and anticipation for greatness on a stage in their eyes is still there. That energy that only comes from the glow of a rookie group can still be found even after all the years that they've been on stage. You can tell that they're still obsessed with giving amazing performances for their fans, not just by the way they perform, but the limits they push themselves behind the scenes. The girls still feel refreshing and strong. And while I'll never justify, again, hate trains in K-pop in any level, I do think that a part of their hunger for greatness came from the doubt the audience gave them from time to time, even when it was not warranted. I will always say that the downfall of a group's performances will start with being unchallenged. And despite SSERAFIM being really good at their jobs, the scrutiny the girls have received, while definitely not fair, has given them more to strive for. And as long as there is a need to impress, there will always be effort to do better. I believe Coachella did that for SSERAFIM. They felt the need to prove themselves after the intensity of the backlash they received. For house cleaning purposes, again, I'm not saying that groups need to be harassed or bullied into doing better. Just challenge. What makes me place the girls second above the other two is not only that they push themselves to do better, but the way they keep the spark for performing alive, and how their overall performances are better in general than the other two. Their stages are creative, every member is engaging, and they always leave me wanting more. For years, I've hailed BILLIE as the best fourth-generation girl group performer, and I still stand by that sentiment. The simple reason why they take the spot, apart from the fact that their group stage presence is simply better than the rest, is the fact that the girls could have no choreography for their songs and I'd still watch them over the rest. No, seriously, like I'm not joking. I still remember their performances for Trampoline, a song that had no choreography, no drama, no intensity, and yet they kept me hooked. These girls have even been praised for only ever needing their voices and a stage to capture an audience, and I strongly agree with those sentiments. In fact, I still remember the goosebumps I felt over their Blue Rose and Trampoline performances for Inkigayo's Sound Bomb series last year. The audience not only stood up in enjoyment while they were still performing, but their Blue Rose stage earned them a standing ovation so long the girls nearly died from embarrassment. Connection with an audience, in my personal opinion, tends to have more of a lasting impression than pure skill. And that has always been BILLIE's advantage over other groups, not just in their generation, but in general. Their love for connecting with your audience and their commitment to giving them engaging performances, even at regular music shows, places them on the pedestal in this ranking that I believe they deserve. I'm not sure if I should say who yet, but there is a fifth generation idol from a big three group who has like the skills of facial expressions when she performs, like everything from the intense looks, the winks, the dominant demeanor. However, it all just looks so planned and engineered to make her look good, and the natural part of it has been stripped away. So it's like while she has the skill, it feels gimmicky and very pay attention to me, not necessarily I'm just having a good time performing a song I like. With BILLIE, because their stages feel natural, the audience responds to them well, as authenticity is the best way to get a good reception from people. Even when considering their first comeback, a song that required heavily animated performances, it has never felt soulless and gimmicky, but rather just 7 performers having a good time with their audience while accurately portraying the meaning behind their music. Their debut didn't get them a lot of the attention that they deserved, and that was partly due to the lack of stage presence and group chemistry. Despite how talented they were, how impressive their arranging music style or creative their concept was, nothing about them on stage said, "We are real performers, pay attention." But somehow, in a single comeback, they managed to fix that, even with one member going viral for facial expressions. That era specifically was a real challenge for their stage presence. As a song, Gingamingayo could simply not be half-assed. The choreography was demanding, the childlike concept required quick and dynamic facial expressions in order to be performed adequately. Literally everyone in the group had to pull their weight to give satisfactory performances, because even a slight reduction of energy would be painfully noticeable. Each member had memorable bits of the song in itself, whether it was saying a quirky catchphrase, performing a striking dance move, an intense rap, or a bubbly chorus. They each needed to express their part well for each to stand out properly. At the same time, if any one of them did way too much with the goal of outdoing the other in an unhealthy competitive way, they would have ruined the performance entirely. Teamwork was the only way this could actually work out to be as good as those performances were, and I believe that BILLIE did that flawlessly. As great as that era was, Ring My Bell, the next comeback, took a more rock-infused route, requiring less than the over-top facial expressions of Gingamingayo. The song still needed plenty of power and charisma, and the members expressed that well without trying to recreate a carbon copy of their previous era. Some members simply toned down their facial expressions, while others focused on one side of their stage presence archetype. We saw Haruna and Sion taking a more charismatic route in those performances, making them stand out more than their previous eras, while Haram and Sean, who focused more on their charismatic sides in the past, adopted a more sensual and dominant energy in facial expressions. By the way, Sean and Suyeon are not the same person. You have Siyun, Suyeon, and Sean. 3 different people, one group. Just to clarify. It shows that the improvements of stage presence in the past era wasn't one-time luck, or just random throwing of facial expressions just because, but rather it was a proper understanding of what was needed to give a great performance for a particular concept. The Ring My Bell era particularly is when the girls became more audience-focused, as this was the first time they performed with fans in sight. Their music show performances became loved even amongst non-fans in their audiences. Literally, the music shows have always ended with people screaming at the top of their voice just from the sheer fun they were having. The comebacks they had after that, with the exception of Hocus Pocus, pursued themes different from previous concepts. Eunonia was a lot more relaxed, and the B-side, Enchanted Night, was sensual energy heavy. BILLIE performed those flawlessly, again proving their growth as performers. It should not be a shock why I ranked them first on this list. They know what they're doing, they happen to be very good at it, and have always given their audience a great time wherever they perform. I'm not going to get into too much detail about my ranking system because it might take up too much of the time of this video, but if you do want some basic rundowns on how I view stage presence, I would suggest going to the first episode. There's a little bit of a foundational explanation there. However, I do think that I should explain what I do prioritize in stage presence ranking so that it might help you understand where I'm coming from even in moments where you do not fully agree. Because stage presence is subjective to preference and we all have different ones, what one views as most important in stage presence may not resonate with another, and that is totally okay. It's not that it's wrong, we just value different things. In my terms, the basic foundation of stage presence lies in the precision of 5 main aspects: one's body language, facial expressions, versatility, consistency, and camera work. No matter an idol stage presence archetype, to capture an audience's attention, one ought to utilize these aspects precisely to create a magnetic energy that makes them stand out. It's not just about possessing these aspects, but also manipulating them as best as one can to convey the emotion behind the music they're performing. For example, in the facial expressions category, what expressions an idol needs to convey a bubbly, cute song may not be the same for a sensual one. That's why versatility is more important to me. I don't necessarily focus on an idol's facial expressions to begin with. Anyone can do that. In fact, I think that should be a rookie's bare minimum work that their company taught them before debut. An idol being the master of facial expressions for one type of concept is also not impressive to me either. What I prioritize in this category is how precise and timely their facial expressions are in relation to the music that they're performing, how versatile they are when they are performing different concepts, and especially how well their eyes convey the emotion behind the music. In fact, a couple of my top picks on this list made it mainly because they do that last bit better than anyone else in these groups. The ability to perform with just the eyes makes an impression on me. I don't know if it's because I'm a theater kid or what, but that ability often earns an idol extra points on my scoreboard. While I'm on the topic of versatility, I should note that I don't really give a damn if an idol stood out in one specific song from their group. So if you have that one fan cam from like 5 years ago to prove to me that an idol deserves a better score, I suggest you save it. The member who performs well in different concepts will get a higher score than them in my books. Consistency is another matter. An idol that performs well sometimes and drops the ball in other ones will be getting lesser scores. And I'm not talking about having a bad day. We can't all perform 100% all of the time. I'm talking about those who literally regress in their skills. I know this because people tend to bring up a group or an idol's past performances to try and prove a point. When I ranked Blackpink's stage presence on the second episode, their fans' comments tried so hard to bring back their 2019 Coachella performance, not to mention their debut era performances to prove that they deserve a higher ranking than Twice, even though Twice has had better performances than them consistently. Glory days, while lovely to reminisce on, mean nothing to me when we talk about consistency in the equation. And finally, in terms of body language, and no, this doesn't necessarily mean they're dancing, although dancers can have an advantage when it comes to body language, I observe more of how they carry themselves when they perform. Do they move with intent and confidence? I can't stand people in general who perform like they're unsure of what they're doing. To capture attention, they must dominate when they walk. Their strides must be intentional and not robotic, and their body movements should appear natural to those watching. Relaxed and confident body language always gains a better score in my book. And speaking of scoreboard, that's another thing that I've added to my ranking system to help me rank idols' positions better. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the grading scale that I use to rank the 24 idols on this list. If you pay attention, you'll notice that as the grade increases, the percentage range required to fit it narrows. What does that mean? It means that no one is getting an A+ for shits and giggles. Every idol in this ranking, in my opinion, has earned their grade, whether mediocre or exceptional. An idol must be exceptional to reach any of the A sections, with a score of 92% or above. The scores themselves are determined by the 5 categories I mentioned earlier. Each scored out of 10, the total is multiplied by 2 to give a percentage out of 100, and based off of that, the idol gets their final grade. For idols who score anything below 76% but are above 65%, I consider average performers, so anyone who scores anything in the C category. I mentioned this because many idols will fall into this category, so don't clutch your pearls when that happens, because I refuse to be impressed by mediocrity when it comes to stage presence. It doesn't necessarily make them bad performers, but rather just points out that they can get the job done. And that's okay, by the way. I know that a lot of us kind of want our faves to be exceptional, but exceptional only exists because we have average to compare it to. Idols that score between 76 to 85% I see as above average. That is a B or a B- grade. They stand out from time to time and they go the extra mile at times to perfect their craft. Anything from 86 to 91% impresses me. All the 3 idols who earned a B+ in this ranking I can guarantee will perform well no matter the occasion. They show versatility, balance, and almost impeccable consistency. They don't need looks, hair, or makeup and styling to stand out. They do it all on their own gifting and effort. Anything 95% and above I consider exceptional. They not only have once-in-a-lifetime memorable skills, but they are also a perfect combination of everything I listed at the beginning with little flaws if any at all. And in case you're wondering if there is an S tier, there is, but Taemin and Taemin alone sits on this tier, so there's really no point in including that in this video. And now that we have all our basics down, let's get into it. I do not have a lot to say on base stage presence because there is not a lot to say. While her strong body language aids to the group's overall performances, I need someone to tell this girl that winking every 15 seconds while having blank facial expressions in between is not stage presence. In fact, I don't have much to say because the presence in itself is simply not there. This is something that irks me about dominant performers in K-pop. Like, oh my god, having strong facial features is not an excuse to just serve face and nothing else. Your eyes and your mouth exist for a reason. Use them. Pretty much the same complaints I had about Shuo from Idol in that other video that I referenced earlier are the same issues that I have with Bae. Of course, Shuo went on to significantly improve her stage presence since then, but the same principle applies here. A little facial expressions for her could actually go a long way, and implementing them could help her individually as a performer. She needs an entertaining edge and she simply doesn't have that. Part of the reason why Liz is so low in this list is because of how much her presence in general has regressed over the years. I know it seems strange since lately she's gained a ton of attention due to the change in her physicality, and no, I will not be elaborating because that is self-explanatory. With that being said, it has not necessarily helped her stage presence. Naturally, Liz is a charismatic performer, and those don't blossom well with restriction, and her stage presence becoming less natural and more robotic thanks to Starship One Youngifying her is not helping. Everything about her facial expressions and at times her body language appears to be calculated with the natural element stripped out of it, focusing on simply looking good, which is not only unentertaining but also inauthentic. If some of you remember, I had a similar criticism of Wonyoung years ago. It seems as if over the years, she and Wonyoung have swapped that energy, with Wonyoung becoming freer and more authentic in her performances, while Liz has added restriction, which is hard to ignore. Her facial expressions especially bother me the most. They have been regressing to moments where it seems like winking and semi-smiling is all she is capable of. My conclusion is that this transition in Liz, perhaps due to her Wonyoungification, seems to be hell-bent in presenting herself as a sensual performer without really learning the elements and the techniques that make up sensual performers the way Chaewon did in the last era of IZ*ONE. She may have the look, specifically the makeup and hair, and it may aid into making her that, but the actual act of performing as one is simply non-existent. Because being a sensual performer is not about lacking facial expressions and randomly popping a wink here and there. It's knowing how to use your gaze, learning focus and fatigue, using subtlety in combination with the mood of the music to bring that sensual energy to the surface. Liz doesn't have any of that. You can't gimmick or half-ass your way into being a sensual performer because it is going to show, which is why her performances come off as plastic. I will say that her body language has become stronger and more precise, but it is doing very little for me when she's not working with her facial expressions to enhance her performances. I will just say it, I adore this woman's vocals, truly one of the best vocal tones in K-pop, but goodness is she a bore to watch on stage. That is it. That is the baseline of her ranking. She's boring. No flavor, no presence, no variety, nothing. Just boring. If you've watched my stage presence content long enough, you know by now that the second charismatic performers start doing less with your face, they risk becoming boring. Not just bad, boring. What Haewon does on stage is just serve vocals and dip. I have little tolerance for idols who can't even do the bare minimum in their performance skills, if I may be frank, so I'm not gonna waste any of my time explaining myself any further. On average, Gayeol is not a bad performer, but she is in desperate need of some fine-tuning, especially in the use of her facial expressions, which is what has kept her from being higher on this list. While she does seem enthusiastic to give her fans some memorable performances, the repetitive use of winks and lip bites are not only redundant, they show a lack of creativity on how to leave a lasting impression to an audience. It's as if she knows little on what to do with herself when the spotlight is on her, so she resorts to what I've called cheap stage presence techniques to make her performances look somewhat palatable. I'm not sure when the winking epidemic in K-pop started, but I am desperate for it to stop now. There are other facial expressions that would do well for her covert dominant nature. She could raise her eyebrows, roll her eyes, side glances, scrunch her nose, smirk, tilt her head down, glare at the camera. Seriously, anything else is better than what she is doing at the moment. And it is not just the use of these cheap techniques that makes it so irritating. It is also in addition how frequently she does them in such short periods of time every moment the camera is in her face. I can literally predict when she is going to wink. For a dominant performer performing mainly elegant songs, it is just so out of place. If she's going to wink that much, at the very least try to give flirty energy, it would work well for her archetype. Micro expressions with medium intensity would look great, not just for her bone structure and her face shape, but the style of music she's performing. I've been noticing a shift in the way Lily is choosing to perform, especially since See That era. It's not significant, but it's noticeable. I believe right now she's going through a transitional period where she is learning what works for her and what does not, because everything from Dash era and before, her stage presence was rather awkward, especially her eye contact with the camera. Lily has beautiful eyes, but they are prominent, which isn't a bad thing, it just makes them striking, and when someone with prominent eyes doesn't know how to put them to good use when performing, it's gonna be off-putting. In previous eras, Lily seemed not to have proper control with her eye contact, kind of doing the whole thing that Jongho does from 80s, where they stare into the abyss of the camera. I don't know if this is a main vocalist thing or what, it's just strange. I've begun to see a lot of change in that department, which has benefited her stage presence overall. It also happens that either their stylist got themselves fired or they upped their game, because the makeup style they have been using on her eyes recently is playing a great part in making that adjustment. The Dukkha shades make her appear more dominant, and coupled with side glances that she's been utilizing more often, it's giving her a little bit of a sultry look, which I love. Her facial expressions have gotten more precise and less all over the place and random. There are still tad bits of awkwardness in her performances, which I know it's gonna hurt to say this, but they can be fixed by eliminating her frequent bun and pigtail hairdos. I know, she looks so good in them, but hear me out. Lily seems to have a bit of an arch in her posture, right? Which increases the awkwardness of her body language. The more flowy and longer her hair is, the easier it is to not only cover that up, but it also helps add an element of natural, effortless energy to her stage presence, which I'm gonna be honest, she really needs right now. I remember saying this about Gram before she left SSERAFIM. Loose, long, natural hair always made her stage presence appear so effortless and casual. And Lily feels that way when her hair is less restricted. If you don't believe me, look up her See That and Know About Me face cams and compare her to the performances where her hair is in like space buns or ponytails. You will notice the difference, I promise. I need her to implement more of that in her stage presence, and I believe it would do wonders towards her improving. Eunchae shines in lively, charismatic songs. During Anti-Fragile and Unforgiven, I saw her step up to the plate and give more energy than her debut, and I think that was due to her comfortability on stage. That has translated into her performance skills today. Although I will say in the documentary, during Unforgiven, she really was going through a lot of anxiety, and I'm genuinely so impressed at how well she could perform. You wouldn't even be able to notice it. She is lively in these particular songs and has strong body language in general. She moves like she has confidence in herself and her skill sets. In songs that don't really cater to her archetype, which, to be fair, there aren't a lot of them, she does try to do more side glances so she can perform the mood of the song well without doing anything over the top, and that's always an advantage. Where I think I have a problem with her stage presence is a lack of variety in her expressions. While her expressions are good in general, they don't have a lot of playfulness in them, which is something charismatic performers cannot do without. She could really benefit from having the same mischievous and cheeky energy she shows off stage in her performances, with a little spontaneity here and there. Expressions that aren't so repetitive and predictable every once in a while would enhance her general charisma and help her not come off as average and basic. I think Spaghetti is helping that side of her come out a little bit, but it is in need of some extra work. I have an appreciation for Jisoo coming to learn her archetype overall. I think there are times when the youngest member of a group feels an obligation to utilize cute energy just so they can make an impression when they are performing. And while she is naturally adorable, Jisoo stands out more when she is in her dominant energy. Baddie era was when I believe she started to come more and more into herself as a performer, and leaning into that side of her archetype did wonders for her performance skills. The way she opens that song will forever be iconic to me. She understood what the theme of the concept was and made sure that it translated well into her facial expressions. This was not just a one-time thing, by the way. I've seen her continuously do that with every comeback after that. Bright and carefree in Rebel Heart and Attitude, charismatic in Heya, and sassy in XOXZ. While she has catered to her more dominant side, she didn't abandon her charismatic energy either. She always incorporates playfulness into her performances, making her appear to have a more fun side on stage, which she does need a bit more of to aid to her naturality. While I love everything I have complimented about her, Jisoo does need to work on appearing more effortless when she is performing, and I think the live singing is getting in the way. Because Jisoo is absolutely committed to out-singing the backtrack every time she opens her mouth, it sometimes takes the focus away from her performance. It's not too obvious though, but it does happen at times, and I think working on that might be advantageous for her. She needs to appear natural when singing during her camera time and not stiffen her body language so much. I see Seolhyun as one of those sensual performers that carries a lot of untapped potential. Her collaborative stage with Yoona and Karina last year proved that to me. I'd absolutely kill for JYP to find someone who can coach her in stage presence. Like, Yoona is truly a star when it comes to performing sensual songs. I mean, her expressions, her body language are really unmatched in that area. So seeing Seolhyun holding her own next to her was a glimpse into what she is capable of. With that being said, she still has ways to go to get to that spot because she can be a little bit of a blank canvas in a lot of NMIXX's performances. A little tweak here and there of her facial expressions, especially good use of her eye glances with focus and fatigue techniques, could help her improve in a way that would make her an above average performer. The same thing I said about Seolhyun could be said about Suyeon. She holds a lot of potential that could catapult her out of the average performer pool. She doesn't seem to challenge herself to perform well outside of Billie's bright and charismatic songs, which is a shame because she really has the ability to. She stood out to me during their first comeback, bringing so much life into her performances. But I did notice a regression, especially for the mellow B-sides, with her constantly returning to the overdone winking and smiling routine. While I still see her as a decent performer with strong body language and elements of naturality, I do think that she is capable of more, which could make her interesting to watch on stage. Years ago, I had a critique on the way Wonyoung performed, specifically on how unnatural her stage presence looked, with the redundant, cutesy facial expressions seemingly aimed at making her look pretty. I acknowledge that while she did have a responsibility to put her visuals to good use, as it was her job, it led to repetitive, boring performances, which didn't spark my interest as much. That was about 3 years ago, and she has significantly improved in that area ever since. Her expressions appear more relaxed and natural, like they are corresponding to the mood of the music, not doing the most to look extra attractive. Naturality is a must for stage presence, and Wonyoung now as a performer just appears to be in the moment, not preparing what she should look like when the camera is on her. This doesn't mean that Wonyoung has completely abandoned the need to look good, because as I pointed out in the past video, it is not a bad thing to know how to work the camera, but rather she has perfected that to a stage where it doesn't appear forced. In fact, it's one of the reasons why she has the second highest score in camera work out of all the idols on this list. From the way she plays with her hair to match the choreography, to the way her eyes always have this playful spark in them, she's learned to bridge that gap between looking put together while naturally having fun to entertain her audience, which has helped her overall stage presence look so much better, and I appreciate that. I feel as though Haruna has slowly but surely been coming to herself with every BILLIE comeback. More people started to take notice in Ring My Bell era, where she became more expressive and lively. Not that she wasn't performing well in their first comeback, but definitely not in a way that attracted attention like it did the other girls. But I do believe that the positive reception to her Ring My Bell stages has been a boost in confidence that she is doing something right. She's become more assertive than passive in her stages, to the extent that I sometimes questioned if I miscategorized her as a covert performer. Yunonia is really when she became more natural with her stages. You can see her having fun and not being too cautious about how she looks, proving that all she needed was experience to feel safe enough to let loose on stage. I do think that she could benefit from learning how to express herself properly for BILLIE's less charismatic songs. It's not that she's bad, but she does need to learn that doing less does not mean doing nothing. And I do believe that will bring some necessary improvement to her stages. It was clear from Girls Planet that Shawn was a good performer. Despite performing majority charismatic, catering songs during her time there, I knew from the beginning, because of the unique shape of her eyes, that she was a predominantly dominant performer. I remember her being one of the few contestants that didn't make me cringe at that awful The Eve performance. I still get secondhand embarrassment when I think about that stage. And that was because she used her unique facial features properly and didn't do the most to try and get attention, and that sparked my interest in her. That hasn't changed over the years performing BILLIE's music. Shawn knows how to blend herself well when performing the diverse genres that the group presents. What I love the most about her is her obvious versatility. She's also a partially charismatic performer, so being more expressive doesn't hurt her performances. I enjoy watching her fan cams because she is naturally cute, but also has a dominant side to her, and performers with contradicting performance styles are always intriguing to me. Kazuha is one of those dominant performers who have learned how to use their archetype to their advantage in order to suit almost any concept. Majority of SSERAFIM's track cater towards charismatic performers. That is why Yoonjin and Chaewon shine so much. They are in their natural element. Kazuha, however, is built for genres that they don't explore as much in their stage performances, like smart and crazy, where less is usually more. Yet she has managed to keep up and perform those songs just fine. And while yes, a lot of it could be credited to her amazing body language, I think that her understanding that her facial structure is made for intense but infrequent facial expressions and knowing what parts of the song to emphasize has put her at an advantage in a place where she shouldn't really have one. This is what I meant when I talked about an idol molding their archetype to the music that they perform, and she is a pretty excellent example of that. Like Kazuha, Seon is another performer who knows how to wield her dominant archetype to perform any song. And like Kazuha again, most of her group's music isn't necessarily catered to her performance type. But unlike other dominant performers in her group, she's not mixed with another archetype, meaning that she is at a disadvantage. Being overexpressive for a dominant performer does not look good, so learning to use the right expressions for bubbly, energetic music is a learned skill. Despite that, she knows what to do and how to give an engaging performance. She makes the best use of her eye contact with the camera and mouth movements with occasional smiles as not to be bland when performing charismatic or sensual songs. Her almost perfect body language, she got the second highest score in that category by the way, makes her appear more engaging in some of these songs like Yunonia and Hocus Pocus. She comes off as a naturally fun and super energetic performer, avoiding her presence from coming off as stale and unentertaining when her face can't make too many facial expressions. My favorite thing about Ray's stage presence is her versatility and her ability to bounce from her charismatic energy to her more dominant one when she feels like it. What I get from one performance isn't always what I get from another. I remember how in Asandia era, Yujin was praised for being more bubbly when the girls had brighter clothing in some stages, while being badass in stages where they had darker outfits. But I feel like some didn't notice that Ray was doing the exact same thing. In some stages, she leaned into her cuter persona, overflowing with charismatic energy, while in others, she focused on less frequent but powerful expressions. When performing with her charismatic side, Shigi has plenty of cute, playful expressions, pouting, smiling, and she literally looks like a doll, while her more dominant energy has the sassy but mischievous side to it. Her ability to do that with one song and sometimes even the same performance is what ranks her higher than most idols whose groups perform a lot more diverse concepts than IVE on this list. I mean, look at her XOXE performance when she was dressed like Snow White and compare it to the one where they had the white t-shirts and she had the glasses. She literally looks like two completely different people. It's amazing. Versatility goes such a long way in stage presence, and I like that she has plenty in her system to go around for any stage. Suki is an overt charismatic performer through and through, and one of the best examples that I have that hard work does in fact beat talent in stage presence. From not being able to perform at all to straight up going viral for a stage presence in just one comeback, I will always refer to her as a constant reminder that working on the right parts of stage presence will get you ahead. Suki is very expressive on stage. She has plenty of energy, and it definitely helps that she is ridiculously adorable, and it just makes watching her an experience. Her round face and eyes are features that suit quote-unquote loud expressions, so as to speak, and charismatic catering songs such as Ginga Minga Yo, Hocus Pocus, Eunonia, and Bring Your Own Best Friend bring out the best energy in making her stand out. Like most pure charismatic performers, however, songs that require her to tone down her expressions leave her looking blander than usual, making it harder for her to assimilate her stage presence with the mood of the music. This is why her versatility score landed on average in comparison to her scores in other categories that are quite high. In these songs, she either tries to use the focus technique, where she just stares intensely into the camera, almost trying to appear badass, or she resorts to the overused winking, which doesn't always work. Her cover of NCTU's Baby Don't Stop with Wua's Nana a couple of years ago is a good example of showing this. Nana, who's both a dominant and charismatic performer, had no struggle captivating the essence of the song, while the same could not be said for Tsuki, who kept winking nonstop and repeating facial expressions too frequently. With that being said, I have been seeing some improvement in some of her performances of some of Billie's B-sides. It may be slow, but it is definitely there, but knowing how hard of a worker she is, I have no doubt that she will learn to perform these songs well as time goes by. I came across a comment that described Moonswa as an army Swiss knife, one tool, many functions, and I think the same can be said for her stage presence. Her biggest advantage will always be her naturality. The stage always looks like her home, like she was born to be there. And honestly, some things just really run in the family. Her and her brother were literally born to be performers. She's never needed over-the-top antic or too many gimmicky facial expressions to attract a viewer's attention. She just gets on stage and has fun. In most group performances, she's always the one hyping them up, increasing the energy and engaging with the audience to have fun. On the more technical side though, Suwa is a dominant and charismatic performer. And what I've said about others with the same archetype applies to her as well. She just happens to be better than them at it. She's full of energy, has impressive body language, impressive camera play, and she's literally the backbone of her group's performances. Also, I love how she looks amazing performing in almost any hairstyle or any color. She performs any concept just as well, and that's what makes her better than the average performer in my books. One of the most complimented things about Sakura in Ice 1 was how quickly her stage presence improved during the course of the group's run. And as good as she was back then, I think SSERAFIM in general unlocked another side of her stage presence with a lot more confidence. If you look at my past rankings, you will notice that a lot of the lower ranking idols tend to be covert charismatic performers. Because they don't necessarily need to be showy to stand out, they end up putting such minimal effort, and I find it damn irritating. But Sakura scratches that itch in my brain that has been desperate for a covert charismatic performer who knows what their freaking job is. Sakura brings so much balance to the SSERAFIM performances because while she carries so much energy in her body language, she's never done too much with her facial expressions to try and match it. Initially, because of this, I thought she may be a dominant performer, but turns out that I was wrong. She just has a coverted charismatic style with a sprinkle of sensuality, and she knows how to make her facial expressions just right to suit the mood of SSERAFIM's music. And all this comes off as very natural too. Nothing looks forced or rehearsed, though I'm pretty sure she does take a lot of time rehearsing. She just manages to make it look so effortless, and it puts her above most everyday performers in K-pop. One of the most common comments I see about Kyujin in her fan cams nowadays is how much more of a mature demeanor she carries when she performs. And I've noticed that too, especially in the Know About Me performances this year. She's tapping more into her dominant side, which I had been hoping she would do in due time. NMIXX has explored different genres this year, both in title tracks and B-sides. And Kyujin nailing all of these concepts is a testament of how much she has grown on stage. Lately, I've seen her exude a sexy confidence which she didn't always have. The way her eyes intensely gaze into the camera, the way her limbs move, the way she carries herself, she knows she's all that. Apart from her growing confidence, Kyujin has also become more effortless in her facial expressions. She comes off as relaxed and just trying to have fun, which is something she didn't do well in the past. It started coming out during See That era and continued consistently after that. I see this even in songs such as High Horse that don't require a lot of intensity. Kyujin is learning the focus and fatigue technique, which I believe she will master in no time with more practice. I really hope that NMIXX's future releases allow her to continue exploring this dominant side in her stage presence, because she could really become one of the more standout performers in the 4th generation if she keeps sharpening this side of her. One thing I know a Jiwoo fancam hates to see me coming. Every comeback I cannot wait to see how she performs a new era because she is just so good at what she does. It was clear right from debut that she was the group's best performer, which by the way doesn't always happen, that a dominant archetype happens to be the best performer in a group, especially to a group that doesn't really stick to songs that are catering to the dominant archetype. Love Me Like This was really when I started to see the gap between her and the rest of NMIXX, which seemed to be a little bit of a trip since the song is supposed to make charismatic performers shine the best. It was my first look into how versatile she could be on stage as a performer, and a pleasant surprise for me. It was genuinely refreshing to find a female dominant performer who didn't feel the need to smile every 3 microseconds in a cute song to fill in the gaps of their lack of skills to perform charismatic performer music. It's not that she doesn't smile at all, because I just know somebody is gonna try to actually me, and I really don't have time for that right now. What I'm saying is that it's not her go-to technique. When she smiles, it makes sense with the mood of the song to do so. She's not just smiling throughout for no reason. That's why I gave her an 8.5 in her versatility score, because she can suit almost any concept she has performed. And she hasn't needed to overuse basic stage techniques in order to do it. Another high score she got was for her body language. She just moves with so much confidence, intention, and has an intense amount of command. Overall, her skill level is commendable and it's made her one of my favorite female dominant performers of her generation. Remember when I said earlier that 2 of my picks ranked high because of their ability to perform with just their eyes? Yeah, Haram is one of them. I've praised Haram's stage presence over the last couple of years, and it's always gone back to her versatility. She is a triple threat, a sensual, charismatic, and dominant performer all in one, and she's put all of her sides to good use when performing. I noticed it right from their first comeback, and some of my subscribers were a little bit skeptical, which, they have every right to be, at me claiming how versatile she was in archetypes very early on into her career. But year after year, she has continued to prove me right. In the following comeback, she performed with just her dominant archetype, using her eyes as her focal point for performing, and just like that, she became my favorite performer in the group. In Eunonia, she was back to her bright, charismatic energy, and when performing the B-side Enchanted Night, she channeled her sensual side, which, by the way, she did that with salmon pink hair. It is not easy to perform a sensual style concept with unnatural hair colors, but she did it anyway. I also love that she is not too expressive when she performs. I know that is the usual preference for most K-pop stans, and in her Ginga Minga Yo fancam she proved that she's definitely capable of it, but I appreciate the fact that she's never felt the need to be more expressive after that she didn't turn to being a one-trick pony with predictable performances. This adds to her versatility, which is one of the highest ranked overall in this ranking. I know that she will keep this energy up in BILLIE's next comebacks, and I look forward to watching her fancams every time. I would go as far as to say that Yoonjin is one of the most natural performers in K-pop. She genuinely looks like someone who's living in the moment when she's performing. She's so captivating, she's charismatic, and her performances always come off as effortless and just part of her personality. They aren't any seemingly over-the-top antics to try and put attention onto herself. She's literally the definition of girls just want to have fun when she is on stage. And as much as I love that about her, it's actually not my favorite thing about her stage presence. It's always going to be her versatile expressions, even as an overt charismatic performer. As I've said the same about Jiwoo, it's impressive when an idol who's a pure archetype can assimilate into almost any concept. This is evident in her performances of songs such as Smart, Crazy, and Hot. She finds ways to tone down her strong expressions with appropriate techniques, for example using fatigue to suit a concept. I also notice her taking advantage of her playful and even flirtatious eye contact in songs like Smart, which don't necessarily match her archetype, to look good on stage. This shows that she understands the moods of all the songs that she performs and what is required out of her when she is on stage. It gives the impression that she actually cares about her audience getting quality performances, which I respect personally. Oh, what can I say about Chaewon that I haven't already in the 20+ minute video I made entirely dedicated to her stage presence? That she is one of the best performers of her generation, or that she oozes with charisma, or that she is the very definition of confidence, or better yet, that she developed an entire new archetype while in IZ*ONE because she is just that hardworking and just that smart on stage. I could spend forever talking about how much of a star this girl is. As I mentioned, she is a naturally charismatic performer, but IZ*ONE's music was mainly catered for sensual performers. And Chaewon, who was not very good at performing these songs, somehow learned all the styles of sensual performers and has perfected them ever since. She is precise, she's powerful, she's playful, cheeky, sexy, all rolled into one. Her versatility, ingenuity in expressing herself, and her dominating body language makes for a striking and unbeatable combination, with few female idols in her generation being able to compete with her. Chaewon just has a lot of star power alone, and I love how SSERAFIM has allowed her to explore more of what she started towards the end of IZ*ONE's career. I could go on forever. A minute is simply not enough to express how good she is at what she does. If you want all of my thoughts on her as a performer, just click the top right corner of your screen once you're done with this video, because I had plenty to say. 3 years ago, I uploaded a video I titled The Standards of Stage Presence, and I talked about Yoojin, and there was a number of people who were irritated with my inclusion of her. Funny enough, at the point of me making that video, she had gone viral twice for her stage presence, once for IZ*ONE Sequence and the other for IVE's debut, for two different reasons, yet people tried to act like I was pulling reasons to include her out of my ass. The way some people continue to underestimate her when she has proven time and time again that she's a stage presence genius, literally, will never cease to amaze me. Before making my video on Chaewon's stage presence evolution, Yoojin was my first episode. And in that video, I expressed her impeccable use of the focus and fatigue technique, which, by the way, makes her the other pig aside from Haram, who's perfect at performing with just her eyes, and how that puts her ahead of so many idols in the industry in general. Her level of precision with it and how perfectly she matches the mood of any IVE song is proof of her skill level. That's why she continuously goes viral for her performances, and fans constantly name songs after her. She really is a hexagonal idol, as the Koreans put it. There is not a thing that she can't do, even in stage presence. Name a concept, she will knock it out of the park. Ask versatility, she will always deliver. Confidence, she eats that for breakfast. She's the only idol here I have given a perfect score in camera work, body language, and facial expressions, because she's absolutely deserving of it. Her confidence is untouchable, and I truly believe she knows how much of a star she is. What I love the most about that is that she is great just as a sensual performer alone. And we know those are heavily underrated in K-pop. And as good as some of these girls on this list are, Yoojin outperforms them all. And this was the easiest #1 I think I have ever given in a ranking video. And that is it. That is the end of this video. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. It's taking me like forever to make this video, but I wanted to make sure that I get it to you before the month was over. I was very excited to be able to do a stage presence video for the first time in 3 years, and I hope you all enjoyed it. So right now, I've got to go because I've got another script to write for you guys for your next video, and I want to get that out of the way before Isla's come back because I don't want anything distracting me when the girls come back. So hopefully you had a great time watching this as much as I had making it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. Mwah.